Hi, Gerhard Bloom, once again looking at the tyranny and the delusions of the social justice movement. So I would like to reflect on the meeting between Zelensky and President Trump and Vice President Vance, etc. Right? So Zelensky had come to Washington to sign an agreement over rare earth minerals. So American investment in the Ukraine, there would be American companies there and American personnel on the ground. Their presence would dissuade the Russians from invading, right? And Donald Trump had specifically said, yes, there would be some weapons supplies as well, support, but the war would end. The war would end. Hundreds of thousands of Russians and Ukrainians have been killed. It is awful. And Zelensky, as I say, there was an understanding before Zelensky made his way into Washington, but used that forum to throw a wrench into the entire deal, right? Repeatedly, he's calling Putin a killer and a terrorist. This is a guy who needs to negotiate, right? He is not in any position of strength. What strength he has been underwritten by the Americans and the Europeans, right? Billions of dollars in aid, weapon systems gone to waste, right? Destroyed on the battlefields. And he wants more and more. What he can't do is replace personnel, right? I had a friend of mine a couple of years ago, when this started, this is just like the Second World War. I said, no. This is like the First World War. Trench warfare, dug in, murderous meat grinder, right? But at a certain point, Zelensky and the Ukrainians are going to run out of personnel. Russia has about 4 times the number of people that Ukraine does. And guess what? Thousands of North Korean soldiers have gone into that meat grinder and died on the side of the Russians. This is awful, and it needs to stop. And at some point, Zelensky's lines, their formations are going to collapse. And there's no predicting this, right? At a certain point, enough soldiers will die, others will run away, the lines are going to get overrun, and then Zelensky will have no bargaining power, zero. That country will be lost to the Russians. So, and Zelensky keeps pushing this maximalist position, again, from a position of weakness, right? Talks about the withdrawal, Russian troops withdrawing from his land, right? He needs to say goodbye to Crimea and the Donbass, right? The eastern Ukraine, it is Russian. And Crimea, been lost since 2014. How is Putin going to sign some peace deal, withdraw all of his troops, billions of dollars of money gone into this venture, and hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers died? He cannot do that. That is not something that is going to happen. Russia will continue to pursue this unless he can have some face-saving win on this. That means giving up eastern Ukraine to the Russians and Crimea, which since they lost since 2014. And Zelensky says, and Russia's, pardon me, Russia's got to pay for this. Russia's not going to pay for this. Russia's not. So President Trump is, they say in a legal settlement, a good legal settlement is when both sides walk away unhappy, right? Ukraine is not going to win this maximalist position, and it could lose everything. And Donald Trump has had enough of sending billions of dollars in aid. And by the way, American weapon stocks are dangerously low. And this is not the United States of the Second World War with, this war machinery up to full speed. It can produce thousands of planes and bombs and ships, right? No, they've lost that capacity. And this is not something that you can turn on overnight. So the United States is dangerously weakened by this. And what this conflict has done has driven closer and closer ties between North Korea, as aforementioned, China, And Iran. The United States needs to win back the Russians and separate the Russians from the Chinese. This is sort of like the reverse of the Nixon game that separated China away from the USSR. Well, now Russia needs to be won back into the Western sphere of influence and a friend of the United States. So no, Donald Trump is not going to sling mud at Putin or call him names. What they think of Putin in private, that's private. This public stage that Zelensky utilized to embarrass the United States into siding with him and alienating the Russians, this can't happen, and it won't happen. And this thing, and yes, there is a very small potential of this thing going nuclear, right? A, third world war. Well, the United States is not going to have any part of it, but we'll see. I don't believe that it's going to end in a third world war, no. But what it might end in with the absolute destruction of Ukraine, because this maximalist position that Zelensky wants to hold on to, not going to work, not going to work. And EU, they're not going to get drawn into this meat grinder, absolutely not, because nuclear armed Russia, right? So no, Zelensky has got a very tender thread to hang on to. So at any rate, just my thoughts. No NATO membership for Ukraine ever, right? That's off the table. And people are talking, oh, well, Donald Trump is giving up the game before it starts. Nobody seriously believes that that Ukraine is going to be part of NATO. It's insane. Anyways, this tragedy, and it is a tragedy, yes, Russian civilians slaughtered and, absolutely tragic, but Russian soldiers and Ukrainian soldiers dying on the battlefield, and now North Koreans, and for what? For what? I said this, months into this conflict, that the Ukraine needs to cut its losses and make a deal, right? Nothing, absolutely nothing has changed on the battlefield since that. Anyways, enough. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Please do check out my book, Deconstructing Social Justice. It's available on Amazon. It's not important because I wrote it. I wrote it because the issues could not be more important. If you like the video, please do drop a thumbs up. Gratifies my fragile male ego. Thanks so much for your time and attention. Bye-bye now.